Hey boys and girls, welcome back. I'm going to be focusing on some different patterns here over the next number of weeks. And one of the things that I want to work on as far as my fishing is using a dry dropper technique. I've been learning this Euronymphing over the last couple years and starting to get a hang of it and feeling that I've progressed well enough to start adding things to my, toolbox. Normally, I'm just fishing with, a single nymph or maybe two nymphs, and had some luck. But there is some water, the situations that you can, apply this dry dropper technique. So, what a dry dropper is more or less a very floatable fly that you're going to be hanging a nymph off of. Okay, I have tied up some 2.5 millimeter beads as far as the type of perdigon that I want to be hanging off of this. I haven't had a chance to test it yet, but the 2.5 seems to be about the right number, and I'm going to be searching for some of these different patterns over the next couple weeks. And what we have here is the Found Link by Mr. Gallop. So as far as the types of things that we have on this fly, what we have here on the back is some CDL. That's the extension here. What we have as far as the body is elk hair, okay, that we're winding around the hook or trying to keep on top of the hook for the most part. On the wings, this is just some antron, and this wing that we have up here is deer hair. It doesn't really do anything for the flotation of the fly. It's mostly for a sighter. So of all the ones that I've done some darker ones also, but this size seems to be about right for the bugs that we're seeing. This is a size 14. Just to show you the comparison, this is a size 12. Same fly, okay, just with the darker March brown colors. This is with deer hair that's this color, as opposed to elk hair that's a little bit lighter. So at least the stuff that I have. So yeah, let's get into it here. The trick of this pattern is using these extended tails to create that surface tension on the top of the water so that it'll float, like that's what you want to hit first. That's what helps keep it afloat. Now, adding weight to that, something underneath, you want to try to maximize everything that you got. So, okay, so as far as ingredients go, I ordered some cheap dry fly hooks off of Amazon. This is Chinese style, Yufeng. Size 14 is what they call 9214. Pretty simple. As far as the body goes, I just have a piece of light brown elk hair. The wing that we got up top here is deer hair that's just been bleached. Okay, I have some Coq de Leon. This is a ginger color. And the dubbing I'm using is Kapok by Semperfly. This is their March brown color. And just your basic white antron. Okay. Thread I'm using is just a brown nano silk. It's a good color. All right, let's jump in. Now, I don't tie a lot of dry flies anymore. That used to be all that I all that I tied. But the hardest thing, especially when you're working with deer hair, is getting the dimensions right. Okay, Obviously, if you cut off too much and you tie too much on, it's going to make the bug look not realistic. So trying to find that balance of the diameter of the body that you need and the diameter of the wing that you need just takes a little bit of practice. And after you do a couple of them, you figure it out as far as how much you're going to need. Now I'm going to take some of the CDO and we're going to tie this in right at the very back here. We want these long, okay, because this is going to be, if you want to call it, the undertail. All right, like this. I'm going to tie those in, and when I started tying in the thread, a couple eye lengths back, that you want to start this body because you want to leave a little bit of room on the front here for when we have to put that top wing on. We have to build a base in front of this so that it sits up above, you know, the splayed wings of the antron. Okay, so next we're going to get our elk hair. After you cut it off, peel all the fuzzies out, spread it out. Okay, this is probably too much, but I am going to thin it out once I put it in the stacker. Okay, and we're going to pull this out. And then I am going to just thin it out a little bit. As far as how much to use, I mean, the little trick that I do when you have this in your fingers, okay, if you can roll it and not feel that there's that it's all corded up, that's kind of what I do, you know, as far as, you know, finding the right amount. If I can feel it when I'm spinning it through my fingers like this, if I can feel that there's I don't know, a center of that it's not rolling well, I know that I have too much. So that's why I always thin it out after the fact. Now with this bug, we're tying this on right where the thread's at, and we want these little fibers to extend just beyond the hook. Okay, so finding that right length is important. When I cut this on this part, I try to cut it inside of 1 millimeter, pretty much right up against my fingers like here. Okay, on the second part, we're going to leave a little bit of extra length because you want to create a head up front. So I'll show you what we do there. Cut those over in my garbage can. Okay, see what we got here. Spin your thread counterclockwise, and we are not putting a lot of tension on this. Okay, I'm just wrapping this in open wraps, trying to wiggle my fingers, keep it on top of the hook or a little bit around the hook. You don't want to pull down like you're spinning deer hair. Okay, once we get back to this point, put a couple wraps on there. At that point, I'm going to start to put some pressure on so we can get that little bit of a flare in the back. And then on the way back up, I'm just crossing over those wraps that I had previously made. And at this point is where I'm really starting to tighten down because I want to secure these to the hook. Sometimes if you don't secure it, your whole body will spin. So don't worry about the mess that we're gonna create here. And you see how these little tails are kind of coming out the center of this little flare. That's what we want. If you use the right color thread, the reason I use this light brown thread is dark brown, and you can kind of see those little segmentations on there, or at least, you know, it looks a little bit like segmentations. It's kind of hard to do that on a size 14 hook. Okay, now we're going to take our Antron. We are going to secure this right on top of the hook, right where the body meets the thorax. Okay, once you get it secured on there, now we can start doing like a figure 8 to make sure this is going to stay where we put it. Excuse my hands for a second. Don't worry about the length of these fibers. Obviously, you know, we're going to trim them. So you put a couple figure 8s in there. Keep them on top. Okay. Now you can see the length that we have here. Obviously, that's too much. What I like to do first is kind of spread these out a little bit. I'll pick these apart at the end. It's just a little bit easier. I don't know. I find it's easier to see exactly the shape of the wing that you have before you cut it. As far as to length. Now, the distance, you know, basic mayfly wings is size 14. So I would say here. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side just to try to match this up. This is just a straight cut. Okay. We'll adjust this. As far as cutting it, cutting the angles in it. Okay. Now I get a little pick, my little pointer, because these little fibers do get twisted in here. If you get that in there, spread them out, they'll come back to the same point once you know, they get squished in your box or something like that. All I'm doing is just sticking this pointer in at the base where I tied this in and just trying to get all of these fibers spread out. Okay. Now, once we get them flat like this, you need to cut them the way that spinner wings are going to be laying on the water. So you want to go from this front point closer to the tail, probably about a 30-degree angle. Okay, so we can create this angle here. You're going to flip it over. This one's a bit messy. Just make sure you don't cut your thread. Okay, that's what we got. Easy, right? Okay, now dry fly dubbing, doesn't really matter what you use. I got some of this kapok just because it had the right color that I wanted. I wanted something a little bit darker than the body, and it's a good idea when you're putting all this stuff on, especially dry fly dubbing. You want it as thin a noodle as possible. This kapok's supposed to be really good. I have noticed it gets a little clumpy. Okay, So we're gonna put this on super thin. I have to put it on twice. That's okay. So you want to make sure that your thread is right at the base there. And all I'm doing is just covering up this hook a little bit. Remember, we have to try to build a little bit of a base out in front of the wings here for us to tie that top wing on. Okay, that's the head. You can do this all in one step if you want. And then we're going to do figure eights around these wings. This is where we finally get them like set into place so that we can flare them a little bit better. So take your time with it. Get it to look right. Okay, then we're going to tighten down right in front of those wings. Okay. You can see how that kind of flares those out a little bit when you're doing those figure eights. Don't worry about all these extra little fibers. But that's finished product there. Make sure they're on top, nice and spread out. You can trim this stuff up, but most of it's going to be covered up with the wing. So next, get whatever color you want to use for that top wing. It doesn't really matter for the bug, because all you're using it for is to see it. It doesn't go underwater, so it's not really aiding in that flotation. And same type of feel when you're picking out an amount. You know, I guess that's the best way to say it. I do it by feel. I'm not a big fan of deer hair. It's messy. Thin that out a little bit. Okay, bring it in here, and I just do like a visual measurement on this. Okay, if we're gonna put an angle on this, which is usually about this, you don't want these to extend past the second tail here. You want to keep everything inside the gap of the hook. So when you pinch those off, at this point, for this one, like I said on the body, when we cut off that length, you know, you want to leave a little bit extra than you did on the body, because we're going to pinch this and flare it up a little bit. So I normally give it like an extra millimeter. Okay, spin your bobbin backwards, draw all this back, and you see where we have this flare here, or where we have the end of this. Okay, we're just going to pull down a little bit because we want that to be part of the head. And then I will wrap backwards a little bit, make sure we got the right length. Before we tap everything down, I want to make sure that I haven't trapped these wings. Okay, and I'm just gonna wiggle those through the deer hair. Find my whip finisher. Okay. Now with this antron, there's always little frillies sticking around, especially after you try to spread those out a little bit, like those spinner wings. Just try to get everything in its place. Clear those wings just so it looks pretty. But if you see the bottom of it, nice and clean on the body, give yourself, when you're dealing with the surface tension of that water, you want everything to try to ride in that meniscus of the water, that very top film. So this is going to be what, that's the best chance that you're going to get. You can flare these tails however you want, change the color on the top. Like I said, it's basically just for a sighter so that you can see it, so that the fisherman can see it, not that the fish can see it. So there you go. Found link. I'm assuming that name comes from the missing link, but what Kelly Gallop says, mostly what he thinks, the bulk of the success is coming from this, this double tail, so that the water, it'll sit on the water like this, and it's still acting as a flotation. The reason you don't want to tighten all that up in there, you want to create that air trap so that the deer hair, which is hollow, can, work to its best ability. So there you go. The found link. I'm going to be looking for some new patterns, different bugs I want to try myself. And, we'll see you again in a week or so. All right. Thanks for stopping in, guys.